Recording in progress.
All right, welcome everybody to the August 3rd Board of Adjustments meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 1:30. Can we get a roll call, please?
Clay Thomas,
Here.
Rob Pierce,
Here.
Peter Gishon,
Here.
Kathy Julian,
Here.
and Don Christensen did let us know he would be absent. However, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Let's pledge of allegiance. Peter, you want to lead? All right, ethics law, Mr. Large, please.
Board members are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the board today, you have received a gift or a loan, you have a pecuniary interest, you have a commitment in a private capacity, such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship, or you provide a representation or counseling before an agency to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter being considered, you must disclose the gift, that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at the time the matter is being considered. And you must furthermore abstain from deliberation or voting on the matter if it is clear that the gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Board members are also reminded that under the Board of Adjustment rules, if you've had any contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the board today, you should disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting. Additionally, members of the public may submit public comment by either attending the meeting in person, attending the meeting via teleconference, or attending by telephone only. To provide public comment via Zoom, please log into the Zoom webinar at the above link that is on the staff report, and utilize the raise hand feature during any public comment period. To provide public comments via telephone, only press 9 to raise hand and number 6 to mute or unmute. Additionally, public comments can be submitted via email to washoe311@washoecounty.gov. The government will make reasonable efforts to send all email comments received by 4 p.m. on August 2nd, 2023 to the committee members prior to the meeting.
Thank you. Appeal procedure, Mr. Lloyd.
Yeah, most decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and qualify as an aggrieved person or party, you may appeal in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is reduced to writing, filed with the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and the application fee.
Wonderful, thank you. Do we have any public comment?
We have Kitty Nepper. Kitty, please approach the microphone. You have 3 minutes. Please state your first and last name for the record.
My name is Katie Nepper. Safe Embrace is currently a group home zoned LDS in a defined subdivision consisting of 13 single-family residences on a private drive. This subdivision is in Washoe County and entirely surrounded by the city of Sparks. To quote County Code, the low-density suburban regulatory zone is intended to create and preserve areas where single-family detached homes on 1-acre lots are predominant. Small neighborhood commercial uses may be permitted when they serve the needs of residents and are compatible with the residential character of the neighborhood. The maximum number of dwelling units that may be located in this regulatory zone is 1 unit per acre. I worked in banking for 50 years, the last 25 as vice president of U.S. Bank. I helped develop numerous policies and procedures. You cannot write a procedure for every eventuality. When something is outside the box, you make decisions based on similar situations. Safe Embrace wants to go from a group home, 10 or fewer, to a group care facility. Per code, the only difference between a group home and a group care facility is number of people. A group care facility is a civic use, which means the definition of residential use does not apply, but the spirit of LDS should apply. If I wanted to build another dwelling unit on my 1-acre lot, it would be denied. Why is it okay to place what amounts to 3 group homes on a 1-acre parcel that is surrounded by residential 1-acre parcels limited to 1 dwelling unit each? It should require a 3-acre parcel to support this facility and be compatible with the residential character of the neighborhood. A similar use to a group care facility is a short-term rental as all their residents are transient. At minimum, Safe Embrace is requesting 18 residents with 4 staff, which equals 22 people. The code says the following about STRs. The highest tier of STRs, which is 21 or more, is still operated out of a pre-existing dwelling unit, but due to the high number of occupants, is expected to have more significant impacts to surrounding properties. As a result, it is considered inappropriate to be located in a residential regulatory zone. So why does staff or anyone else think 22 is appropriate on a 1-acre LDS lot and not be detrimental to the neighborhood? Safe Embrace was illegally granted a group care facility business license in 2019. Until it was revoked in 2022, they violated multiple codes with impunity. I don't have time to mention everything, but a couple of the major ones are killing most of the mature trees that had been there for decades by never watering them. When they were in danger of falling over, Safe Embrace did not care, and indeed one of the trees fell on the neighbor's house and vehicle. The east fence damaged during construction of the new addition in 2018 is still not fixed to this date, but Safe Embrace does not care. Past history indicates future behavior. Safe Embrace does not think the rules apply to them. I will refer everyone to our extensive exhibits attached to the SUP as I am out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any more
We
public comment?
have Nora Constantino. Nora, please state your first and last name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Nora Constantino, and I apologize for not waiting for the comment on Safe Embrace. I have a plane to catch, but I'm opposed to this special use permit for 2 major reasons: intended use, as Katie gave you a good description of, and the health and safety. I have family that lives on Ponderosa Drive, and when my mother was living with my sister at the end of life, I drove down Ponderosa Drive more than once a day for 2 years. During that time, I saw the neighbors that were living at Safe Embrace, as in not good. They painted the grass green with paint when they were working on it rather than watering it. And that really doesn't count as landscaping. As far as their ability to provide appropriate care, I have serious doubts to this ability. As it just recently, there was an unattended toddler out in the neighbor's driveway for more than 30 minutes. Not until the sheriff showed up on Ponderosa Drive was there anyone from Safe Embrace even looking for that child. They have ruined the road. It's a private road. Everyone on that street has to pay to maintain the road. It's completely ruined. I know that most residents have had to realign their cars much more often than any is normal, as well as repair their undercarriage more than usual. When this neighborhood was developed, it was developed as a single-family home with spacious 1-acre lots. It was not zoned for multifamily or, more importantly, multi-use. The special use permit should be denied based on this just alone. Really, the bigger issue, though, is the safety of the entire neighborhood, both people that are at Safe Embrace and people that live on Ponderosa Drive. Domestic abuse crosses all races, all socioeconomic status, and genders. This is important as the address for Safe Embrace has been part of public record for more than a year. I would say, I don't know the exact date, but it's been a while. In this day and age, when you have a computer on your smartphone, it's very easy for anyone to find the address. Prior to even Safe Embrace's address being published, I saw numerous mostly males at one end of the block waiting for their significant other to come and join them, as well as women waiting at one or the other end of the block, waiting to meet someone to pick them up. This is not safe for anyone, not just the people that are at Safe Embrace, but also the people that live on Ponderosa Drive. As I'm sure you're aware, domestic violence often ends in the death of the abused and sometimes the abuser. Our area is no different. We recently had a murder by an abuser. Keeping women in a secure...
Thank you. Your time's up. Thank you.
We have no further public comment in chambers. I'm going to give it a second for any hands raised on Zoom. On Zoom, I have John Bird. John, if you could please unmute and state your first and last name for the record.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay, my name is John Bird, 2105 Ponderosa Drive. I'd just like to make a comment, and many of the public ones I've made before. A few weeks ago, I had a very small child come into my driveway, very nice and what have you. However, I was compelled to call the police. The sheriffs showed up, 3 cruisers, 6 officers, and in investigating where the child came from and what have you, they asked me where I thought the child might have come from. Of course, Safe Embrace. I live right next door to them. They dispatched 2 officers over there to knock on the door to find out anything that they could about the child. The 2 officers returned and said, "We know somebody's in there, but they will not answer the door, and we have no real recourse on this thing." I don't know what the upshot of this thing was, but Safe Embrace keeps telling us about how they're going to take care of the business and be more neighborly and all this other stuff. This is not taking care of business and being neighborly. Now, when you have children wandering around unattended and refusing to answer the doors, even when the sheriff's departments show up, right? This is just another event that just keeps on going to the long list of basically abuses that we put up with from this particular group of people. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further hands raised via Zoom.
All right, thank you. We will move on to number 6, then approval of the August 3rd agenda. Has everybody got a chance to look at that? Are we good with it? If so, can I get a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to approve.
I second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope, motion passes. Thank you. Number 8, planning items. Resolution of appreciation. Do we?
We skipped the number 7.
Oh, yeah, sorry, draft minutes, sorry, number 7, I marked the wrong one. Approval of the July 6th draft minutes. Does everybody get a chance to look at those? Can I get a motion? We're good with them?
Kathy Jillian, I move to approve the draft minutes.
Clay Thomas, I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, motion passes. All right, now number 7.
Mr. Chair. Yeah. Mr. Chair, I received a phone call from former board member Stanley asking if we could continue this item until September. He's out of town, and
Okay.
he would appreciate
All right.
that.
That's fine, didn't know
Thank
that. All right. All right, so we'll move on to number 9, public hearing item. This is amendment of conditions, case number WAC 23-0007. Mr. Lloyd, do you want to introduce it?
Absolutely. Yeah, for hearing, discussion, and possible action to approve an amendment to the conditions of approval, specifically Condition 1B for case number WPVAR 19-0001, to extend for 1 year the requirement that the building permit shall be issued on or before June 4th, 2024. And representing Washoe County in this matter is Staff Planner Julie Olander.
Julie?
Good afternoon, Julie Olander with Planning and Building. So this is an amendment of conditions for a variance that was approved in 2019. And all we're asking the board to review is the date that building permits have to be issued by. So they're asking to extend that for 1 year to June 4th, 2024. I think I went too far. There. So this is a property that's up in Incline Village. You can see there's Village Parkway coming down, and then there's a closer, I've sort of zoomed in on the left so you can see where the parcel is. And it is a parcel with several units on it. So as I said, on March 7th, 2019, you as the board heard this item. However, it was denied, and it was denied because you found that it could not, that it was detrimental and that there were special privileges. And the variance was to reduce the front yard setback from 15 feet to 1.5 feet on the northwest side of the property, and then the side property from 5 feet to 1 feet to construct two garages, one a single-car garage and one a two-car garage. It was appealed to the Board of County Commissioners on May 28, 2019, and they overturned the Board of Adjustment's denial. I also want to point out that there has been an extension on this permit already. On August 21st, 2021, this board extended this permit for 2 more years to June 4th, 2023. And this is sort of a site view showing where the proposed garages are going to be located. They're highlighted in yellow. And this is what we're proposing to change. This is the one amendment that's in the original approved conditions, and it's 1B. So we propose to move that to 2024, that they have to complete all their building permits. And the reason they've done this is they've had various issues over the years since 2019. They had problems with COVID. They've had some issues with TRPA, getting the regulations, doing what TRPA requires. And currently, they do have 2 building permits in process for the 2 different garages. However, they've run into some snags on those with what fire is requiring, and then also there's some slope issues, so they're having to address some of the issues with the slope, because the property, because of where the garages are located, and because the setbacks are quite narrow. Oops. And the property was noticed 500 feet from the site, which included 46 parcels. There was no neighborhood meeting required for this because it's a residential property. I didn't receive any phone calls. However, I did receive an email from Nevada State Lands, and I believe you all got that email restating what they originally had issues with the original variance. Various agencies and departments have reviewed this application, and their comments are contained in the staff report, and also if they had conditions of approval, they are issued also in that. Staff is able to make all the I want to go back. This should have been, staff is able to make all the findings as explained in the staff report. I do want to ask for an amendment to add the construction hours. That was not done in 2019. We now have as a standard condition. However, I'm proposing to add that one condition, and I didn't add it into my the conditions that are before you, so I'm proposing to add that, and I'm providing a possible motion with that language in it with the amended conditions. I'm available for questions, and I believe the applicant is available for questions via Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Olander?
No, but I do thank Ms. Olander for answering a number of my questions prior to this.
Okay. Are we sure, this is Rob for the record, I have one question. Are we sure that the 1-year extension is going to be long enough?
That is my understanding. He has the building permits in, previously had not had those building permits in when we extended previously. So my understanding is that this time he's got everything sort of ready to go. He just has to meet the corrections that have been placed on the building permits. So his hope is to finish before the winter. So I think this 1 more year should do it.
Okay. Is the applicant present? As you said, he's on Zoom.
On
Does he
Zoom,
want
I
to
believe.
do a presentation or not?
Yes, I have John Hash. If you could please unmute and state your first and last name for the record.
John Hash.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Just wanted to let you know we were 4 years in the TRPA approval process because to begin with, this lot was never an IPES lot. It never had an IPES score on it, so we had to start basically as if this lot had just been created. And we did all of that. We even hired a consultant who helped us get some of the issues resolved, and we finally received our TRPA permit last month, in May. And our permit has been in the county for over a year. It is now on its 5th review. It appears that each time we get what is wrong corrected, another group finds an issue with the permit, which they just did. And now they want us to reconfirm the footings that were originally confirmed by a structural engineer. And we're having to do that again. We will have that done within 2 weeks. It's a geotech review done by Western Geotech. And hopefully we will get it started this year. We've been waiting a long time. It's been tough on old people up there, shoveling snow off the cars. This time, we didn't even get a chance in May to start work on the lot or the site because we still had about 3 feet of snow on it. So we've been running behind, and as you know, we only have a 6-month from May until October building cycle. And it's something I think people should recognize at your level, and I've talked to Dave Solaro about this. We only have 6 months. You give us the same amount of time on a building permit or on a Board of Adjustment variance as you give people in Reno who have a full year to work on these issues, and we end up having half that amount of time to work on them. So it's something that should be looked at somewhere down the road. Those are my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Julian has a question for you.
I did go, Kathy Julian for the record, I did go out and look at the site as I reside in Front Village. And as I understood, you have the foundation work already done. A lot of digging is there. I saw rebar in the ground and a lumber delivery yesterday, porta potty up. So my understanding was that it was already under construction in that regard, right? Correct?
That portion of it that TRPA allows us to work on, we have done. We have the original TRPA permit granted to us, allowed us to put in temporary BMPs, which allows us and to excavate up to, but not more than 5 feet. But you cannot finish the foundation. You cannot pour I'm not a contractor, but you cannot pour the concrete until we receive the Washoe County permit.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else? Okay.
Peter Gishon for the record. Do I understand that the original conditions of approval come forward with the new conditions such that we still have the IVGID requirements to relocate a fire hydrant and water meters? Has that work been done?
That is no longer a requirement as far as I know from IVGID. They came out and asked us to take a look at replacing some water lines that run into the building, which we did. We did that for them. And as far as the fire hydrant, that's not an issue. There was an issue of whether or not we would have to have sprinklers, because when we originally submitted our plans, sprinklers were not required, but had since been adopted by the North Tahoe Fire Protection District. They have relinquished that, and we now are only going to put in alarms under their approval of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? So Ms. Olander brought up the fact that she would like to add the hours if this is approved from 7 to 7. Are you okay with that, if that is added?
That's not an issue for us. I don't think it would be an issue for any contractor or anything. Curtis McLaughlin, who is the building contractor, I don't think that's an issue for him either in terms of time.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Anything else? No? All right.
We'll
Okay.
close this out.
Yeah, okay, let's move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment on this?
We have no public comment in chambers, and I have no hands raised via Zoom.
All right, bring it back to the board. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to, with your permission, bring Ms. Olander back up to
Sure.
the podium. I have a question for her.
Sure.
Julie, according to this, it says the applicant shall meet all conditions approved previously on March 7th of 2019 that was within that variance. Have they done so? Have they complied with all the other ones from the prior, from 2019?
Julie Olander for the record. So it's during the building permit process that I go through these conditions to make sure that they've met them all. I have not signed off on this building permit yet, so until those are all completed, then that's where those are caught, and that's where those are reviewed. So because the building permit is still in the process of being, corrections being made, once all those corrections have been submitted, then I will make sure that the plans match what was proposed, and then also they have showed that they've met all the conditions.
Okay, so just a point of clarification, at this moment in time, the original conditions from 2019 have not been met because we're still waiting for construction permits, is that it?
Correct. They won't be met until the building permit is signed off by planning.
Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up question for that. So before you issue that permit, will you be checking with IFGID to ensure that all of these various points on page 16 here, 3A through F, are either complied with or no longer necessary?
So IFGID also gets this building permit, so the people are on those conditions, they all get the building permit, so they're responsible to make sure their conditions are met to their satisfaction. So if now IFGID is saying that they no longer have to move the fire hydrant, that's IFGID's, that's their decision to make that, they make that decision.
And if I can piggyback onto that too, we do send the action order with the conditions to each of those reviewing agencies that have provided comments. So IFGID does have a copy of all of those conditions that they opposed. Yeah.
And then I just have a query perhaps for Mr. Lloyd. When I went out and looked at this property, I saw that the single-car garage was being built in a location where it clearly blocks one of the neighboring condos' front view and so forth. I'm curious what kind of rules and regs the county has about buildings being built such that they would then block the windows and you'd be looking out at a garage rather than the cul-de-sac. And that I recognize it has nothing to do with this consideration of this request. But
Those are the considerations that need to be addressed at the time that the original variance came in, and it's one of the things that we look at. Now keep in mind, there is, a neighboring property does not have ownership to a view shed. We do not have such things. And so oftentimes when construction happens, it does block certain views. However, that is something that needs to be taken into consideration as a possible potential negative impact. And that specific finding needs to be made during the review of the variance. And if that did not take place, I'm sure that was one of the things that was addressed at the original variance. But again, I haven't had a chance to go up there and look at during construction. You bet.
Do you have any other discussion?
Discussion? Back to the board?
Yes, it's back to the board, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's Clay Thomas. Now that we're back before the members of the board, having reviewed this, I've spent some time really giving it consideration. And I know it was mentioned earlier by the applicant that, he's got to sign things off by TRPA, but in the almost 10 years I've been with the board, I've seen interactions with TRPA, and we don't have a lot of situations where they're coming back because of TRPA. So I don't know if the timeline was succinct enough where they didn't have to come back, or there were certain delays that caused it to go further. That being said, back in March 7th, 2019, it came before the Board of Adjustment, in which we denied the request because it did not meet the 5 findings that were necessary. And of course, that was appealed to the Board of County Commissioners, and the Board of County Commissioners saw it appropriate to go ahead and grant the approval. It then came back before us on August 5th, 2021 for a 2-year extension. And this is where I will probably tell on myself in regards that when that happened and it came back before us, part of my consideration in favor of granting the extension was predicated upon the decision made by the Board of County Commissioners for approving it. Looking back on that, and this is my own opinion, that was not a correct decision to make. The decision of the Board of County Commissioners rests solely with the Board of County Commissioners. The decisions that come before us are predicated upon the guidelines that we must follow. And therefore, when I looked at that, I took into account what the Board of County Commissioners had already approved it. That was beyond, I think, what I should have been considering at the time for the extension. So given that, in addition to given to the fact that the Nevada Division of State Lands has now sent a second letter opposing it, and that the variance requests a distance of the front yard down to 1.5 feet and the side yard down to 1 foot, I am not in favor of granting another extension. That being based on the original Board of Adjustments decisions, taking into account of what was before us at that time, and therefore I still think that applies. So that is my decision on my end.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have anything?
Kathy Julian for the record. I appreciate Mr. Thomas's view on that, because when I looked at this, I wondered, why did this get approved to begin with, if it by the county commissioners? It seemed to me there were issues there, and so I would also agree with Mr. Thomas that I would not support this extension.
I want to caution this is Michael Large for the record from the District Attorney's Office. I want to caution the board that in regard to this, all that is before you is a 1-year extension. In regard to that any findings that you make in regard to past decisions that have been made by the Board of County Commissioners are not the purview of this board at this point. The question is whether or not you can make the findings under this 1-year extension. And that is before you. So any motion needs to reflect that.
Okay.
Peter Kashan for the record. This is only my second meeting, but we've already heard that as admonishment from Mr. Large, so I agree. I can't understand how the Board of County Commissioners overturned the Board of Adjustments decision, but I can make the findings here for the extension of time to the permit.
Okay. All right, can I get a motion?
Peter Gishan, for the record, I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment approve amendment of conditions case number WAC 23-0007 for Greenview HOA with the amended conditions included as Exhibit A to this matter, having made all 5 required findings in accordance with Washoe County Development Code Section 110.804.25.
And what about the hours of operation?
I added the language with the amended conditions to include Ms. Olander's time conditions.
Good.
Mr. Chair, can I ask for a point of clarification through our legal representation?
Of course.
Mr. Large, I appreciate what you said earlier, but given that fact and what is before us, again, it is predicated upon the 5 findings that we are bound by. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
May I ask a point of clarification? Do requests like this ever go back to the Board of Commissioners, since they were the ones that had approved the original in contradiction to what the Board of Adjustment decision was?
They very well could, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, do we have a second? Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Mr. Chairman.
you're
just
not
one more
done?
thing,
Okay.
If I can.
Sorry, go
Mr.
ahead.
Large, given that, then of course, those 5 findings would again be based on detriment, site suitability, and the rest of it. Is that correct?
What I'm saying is, under the law, What's before you is a one-year extension. Are you able to make the findings that a one-year extension will not have an adverse impact on the surrounding property, site suitability, all of those findings? That's what's before you today. The previous conditions of approval in regard to the project itself is not before you. That's not for reconsideration.
But it would be based on such as site suitability if the project goes forward, or a detriment to the community if the project goes forward. Although I understand it's granting a one-year extension, but in so granting the extension means that this project goes forward, and it goes forward predicated upon our 5 findings. Is that?
Yes, that have previously been made, yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, do I have a second? All right, I'll second it. So, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are those opposed?
Nay.
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 We are at an impasse, so 2-2, so there's no action, so it's not approved.
You want to read the appeal
Yes, I do.
procedure?
Yeah, most decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and qualify as an aggrieved person or party, you may appeal in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is reduced to writing, filed with the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for information on the appeal procedure and the application fee.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item B, amendment of condition case number WAC 23-0008, Lee Garage. Mr. Lloyd?
Yeah, thank you. For hearing, discussion, and possible action to approve an amendment of conditions to condition 1C for case number WADMIN 210002 to extend the requirement that the building permit shall be issued on or before June 8, 2025. Representing Washoe County once again in this matter is Staff Planner Julie Olander.
Thank you, Julie.
So this is an amendment for conditions to extend approved WADMIN 21002 to be, the building permits may be issued on or before June 3rd, 2025. So they're asking for a 2-year extension. This property is located out off of, oh my gosh, I can't, Geiger Grade, sorry. And the property is, you can see a smaller version of the property on the right. So the Board of Adjustment heard this item on June 3rd, 2021, and it was for a request for a 2,000 detached accessory structure that was larger than the house, which was 924 square feet. And you approved that. And here's a drawing of where this structure is going to go. The house is down at the bottom. It says existing house. I should have highlighted that. I apologize. And then the garage is located towards the back. So again, we are asking to amend the one condition to change that from 2 years, and we're putting a specific date in at this time, saying June 3rd, 2025. The applicant is asking for this. He's had some various issues in getting to get the garage finalized and submit the building permit to Washoe County. So the building permit has not been submitted at this time. Property owners within 500 feet were noticed. That's 44 parcels. There was no neighborhood meeting required, and I did not receive any emails or phone calls. Various agencies reviewed this application, and any that had conditions are included in your conditions of approval. Staff can make all 5 findings, and that's in your staff report, and I provide a possible motion. And I don't know why it says for amendment of conditions up there. I apologize for that. There are no amendments to this one. And I believe the applicant is available online through Zoom. And I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Olander?
I just have one, Kathy Julian for the record. There's a reference to in the fire thing, in the fire letter, Exhibit B, page 11,
to ignition-resistant Class 2 is required. Is this a reference to the building materials?
I'm not familiar with that phrasing, so I can't speak to it exactly. It was something that fire added to this one. Look at their conditions.
And does that need to be part of the condition if it is not? Because it appears to be something separate from the second condition paragraph. They state, shall also meet and comply with all requirements of currently adopted, blah, blah, blah. So that just caught my eye.
So the conditions in this amendment of conditions is their standard language. Where are you seeing? I'm sorry.
I'm seeing in the letter on page 11, there's a reference to the parcels located in a moderate WUI zone. 30 feet of required defensible space is not possible, I guess, and ignition-resistant Class 2 is required.
Yeah, that's a comment that they sometimes put in, but they will have to review the building permit, and they'll have to make that call. It was more of a comment. It wasn't, to me, that was stated more as a comment, so I didn't see it as a condition. However, they will have that preview to decide if that meets, or the garage is in an inappropriate place. I don't think that they state that, but they're just stating that this irrigation restraint class is required. So they'll have to review the building permit and confirm that themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Ms. O'Leary? No?
One question, please. This is just for personal use, not commercial use?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Is the applicant present and would like to make a presentation?
I do not see the applicant available via Zoom.
He indicated, this is Julie O'Land for the record, he indicated he would be available by Zoom.
The gentleman's behind you.
Thank you, he came in person. So he's available for any questions.
All right.
Sir, if you'll please state your first and last name for the record.
Yes, Brandon Lee.
Okay. Do you have a presentation or anything you'd like to say?
No, we kind of ran out of time on the special use administrative permit. So we just needed to get a little bit more time to get the project off the ground and get it going, get our permit submitted.
Okay. Do you think that's going to be enough time?
There should be plenty of time. We're ready now to submit for permit.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for him? No?
One question.
Just clarification, do you know what ignition resistant?
It's a metal garage, so I don't know what exactly would be ignition-wise in it. 'Cause
All right, thank you.
It's all a metal structure.
Is this a prefab building?
Yes, it's a kit that you basically assemble.
So you have the plans and you're ready to submit now?
Yes, we're all set.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, can we move on to public comment? Do we have any public comment?
There is no public comment in chambers, and I have no hands raised via Zoom.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Do we have any discussion on the matter? No. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion. I move, Kathy Julian for the record, I move that after giving reasoned consideration to the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment approved amendment of conditions case number WAC 23-0008 for Brandon Lee, with conditions included as Exhibit A to this matter, having made all findings in accordance with Washoe County Code Section 110-808-25, consistency, improvement, site suitability, issuance not detrimental, and effect on a military installation.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, at this time, we are going to take a 5-minute break. We will come back at 2:20. Thank you. Bring the meeting back to order. Moving on to item C, special use permit case number WSUP 22-0019, Safe Embrace. Mr. Lloyd, please introduce.
All right, will do, yeah. For hearing, discussion, and possible action to approve a special use permit to allow a group care facility for up to 25 occupants if connected to city sewer, or up to 18 occupants if utilizing the existing septic system. The regulatory zone of the parcel is low-density suburban, and a special use permit is required per Washoe County Code, Table 110-30205.2. The proposal also requests to modify the parking requirements in Washoe County Development Code, Article 410, by not requiring any additional paved parking spaces or additional lighting in the parking area. Representing Washoe County, once again, is Staff Planner Julie Olander.
It's Julie Day. Go ahead, Julie, thank you.
Good afternoon, Julie Olander for the record. So this is a request, as Trevor stated, for a group home, a group care facility for up to 25 occupants if connected to sewer, or up to 18 occupants if not, and utilizing the existing septic system. The property is zoned low-density suburban, and a special use permit is required per Washoe County Code Table 110-30205.2. And the proposal is also requesting to modify the parking requirements by not requiring the area to be paved and or additional lighting required in the parking area. So this property is located off of Ponderosa Drive, which is off of Sullivan. You can see a larger view on the left and in sort of a closer view on the right. The parcels on Ponderosa Drive are master plan suburban residential SR, and their zoning is low density. So all the parcels have the same master plan and the same regulatory zone. The surrounding parcels are in the city of Sparks, with single family to the north and south, multifamily and Alice Risley Elementary School to the east, and off Sullivan Lane is a church to the west. That's right. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I gave that directions right there. The church is to the east, sorry about that. And the school is to the west. Anyway, I apologize for that error. Anyway, the site, it was located within the city of Sparks' sphere of influence. However, it was removed from the SOI and moved back into Washoe County in 2020. This change of jurisdiction makes all planning, business license, and building application now have to be submitted to Washoe County for approval and review and approval. Safe Embrace does have a current business license as a group home, which allows them to have up to 10 occupants. Safe Embrace is an organization that provides counseling, housing, and shelter services for victims of domestic and sexual abuse and human trafficking. Safe Embrace has been located at this site for over 20 years, and other organizations have had shelters at this location since 1994. The SUP was originally submitted on August 8th, 2022. However, during that process, there were some questions about the capacity for the septic system. However, the applicant has found that the septic system is sized for an 18-bed facility after upgrades in 2018 and provided documentation in their application from NDEP. The application is in discussion with City of Sparks to possibly connect to the sewer, and that would allow for the 25 occupants. Here is a site plan showing where things are located. You can see the main house sort of in the middle, and then there's a converted garage and a 4-bedroom addition off of that. There's play area in the back, and then there's also an area for dog runs, and then to the left is office space. That's a detached structure, and I'll provide some more information on some of these buildings in a few moments. As I said, the shelter provides care for women, men, and children, and the length of stay is typically 90 days, and they typically have 4 staff members on site. Per Washoe County 110-322-10C, a minimum of 1,200 square feet is required. Interior space is required, and it shall be provided for the I should just read this, I'm sorry. A minimum of 1,200 square feet of interior space shall be provided for the first 6 facility users, and 150 square feet of interior space for each additional user. If the facility has 18 occupants, the required space is 3,000 square feet. If they have the 25, it's 4,150 square feet. The site has an overall square footage of 5,706 square feet and an interior space of 4,056 square feet with 8 bedrooms. And I just want to point out that interior space cannot include closets, hallway, garages, or bathrooms. And the interior space was the calculation that was given to me by the applicant. And here's a graph sort of showing this a little clearer. So we have the overall square footage, we have the interior square footage, and we have the bedrooms that are available. And I'm going to go through the square footage a little closer when we get a little farther down. And then I just want to point out there's also a requirement in 322 concerning outdoor space. A minimum of 600 square feet of outdoor recreation area shall be provided for the first 6 facility users and 75 square feet for each additional person. So if the facility has 25 occupants, it's required to have 2,025 square feet. And the applicant indicates that there's 3,300 square feet of outdoor space. Here's some pictures of the outdoor space. So just going through the building and what's located on there. It is a single story, it was built in 1964 as a single story, 2,131 square foot residence with a 650 square foot garage. In 2019, the attached garage that was attached to the house, that 650 square feet, was converted into a storage area along with that addition for where the 4 bedrooms are, which is 1,924 square feet. And that's the building permit. In 2002, that detached garage, a portion of it was converted into office space. And then in 2006, the whole area was converted into office and storage area. The detached garage does not meet the side setbacks, which is 12 feet for LDS, and is considered a non-conforming structure. However, they can keep using it, but if they want to expand it more than 10, they can't expand it any more than 10%. And I just want to point out, all these building permits were finalized and reviewed and inspected by our building department. So here's the layout of the house, and I apologize, this is a little detailed, but I couldn't get a clearer one. So you can see where the house is and then the garage, and this was of concern because it doesn't say in this description on this building permit that this garage was being converted. However, you can barely see it. There's a little note where the garage door is. It's 159, and I talked to the building department, and they indicated that that note on 159 basically is converting that garage, taking out that garage, converting that space into livable space. And then you can see on the right where the bedrooms are, and that was all under that one building permit. And then here's the next building. Well, this is the final building permit for that detached garage. So you can see where originally that storage area was maintained as a garage. However, with the final building permit that they got, they converted that into storage area, and the office area had already been converted originally. The site is currently connected to septic, as I've said, and they are asking there's a possibility it might be connected to sewer. The closest fire station is from the city of Sparks on Victorian Street, which is about 1.5 miles. The facility is ADA compliant, has fire sprinklers throughout the building, and Washoe County Sheriff will provide any policing service necessary. Concerning the landscaping, there is landscaping on the site, and there's been the application proposes to add 1 tree for every linear feet along the street frontage with additional bushes between the trees. This property is considered commercial because of the licensing on it that they're proposing, and they will need to meet all of the commercial requirements in Article 412, the landscaping article, and that is included in the conditions of approval. Here's just some outside views of the property. And then concerning parking, there is parking. There's a circular drive. You can sort of see that in this picture here. And I'll have some other pictures, but I'll show it too. And they're proposing parking on the circular drive, and then there's a parking area. It's all unpaved, and they're asking for that to be waived. However, Just to make it clearly understood, what they're required by Washoe County is they're required one parking space per employee one parking place per employee during peak employment shifts, and then one parking space for every 25 beds. So for this facility, they need, if they have 18 beds, they need 5 parking places, and for 25 beds, they would need 6 parking spaces. And the applicant has indicated that the 4 spaces for the employees should meet what is required. They're indicating they're going to have 4 employees located. So you can see where the gravel area is to the east of the house, and somewhat where that circular drive is. So the modifications they're requesting is not to pave that area. And one of that reasonings behind that is that they were, during their community neighborhood meetings, that they wanted to maintain that neighborhood character of that area. There's quite a few areas, properties on that street that do not have paved area. So to preserve the look similar to neighboring properties, they're requesting that area not be paved, or the driveway. They're also requesting that none of the required lighting for commercials uses be put in the parking lot areas. Again, to maintain that neighborhood, the look that the neighboring properties have. There is a porch light, and then there's lighting on the rear of the house, so there is existing lighting. And just to point out, this property is not open to the public. It's the people that live there are living there by invitation only, in a sense. There have been two neighborhood meetings, one on July 18th in 2022, and then a follow-up meeting on May 23rd of this year. And there were, the attendees said they were not opposed to Safe Embrace, but felt it should be located elsewhere. And the comments included, they didn't feel like there were safety and security problems in the neighborhood. They were concerned about the enforcement of the SUP conditions. They were concerned about noise from the dogs and the residents, traffic, road maintenance on the private road, and road maintenance on the private road. The facility, Safe Embrace has addressed in the application some of these concerns. They're proposing to hire an additional applicant to reside at the site during the overnight hours to address some of the concerns. They're proposing to upgrade the cameras and security system to allow for monitoring of the exterior of the residence. And they're also proposing to have development code guidelines that Safe Embrace is preparing a neighborhood response program. The applicant is also willing to provide contact information from the executive director and shelter manager, and as needed, have scheduled weekly meetings, in-person weekly meetings with the neighbors as problems arise. The shelter will be available to house 3 dogs and 6 cats, or small animals, with an indoor and outdoor area. The new pet policies have been put in place to address barking dogs and other pet nuisances, and dogs will not be allowed in the outside runs at night. Parcels within 500 feet of the site were noticed, and 53 notices were set out. Various departments and agencies reviewed the application, and their comments are included in the staff report. And I should say, I usually say on this section, I usually say if there were any emails or phone calls, I believe you've received all the emails that have been received, either in the staff report or have been sent to you separately. Agency conditions are included in the conditions of approval. I wanted to make some amendments to the findings. It was pointed out that I used the phrase the facility group home was in existence, but it's not a facility group. It was licensed by Sparks as a facility, a group facility. However, that was that classification was removed, and they are currently just a group home. So I have had to go in and change my comments on the findings to make sure everything just states it as a group home, and the word facility is no longer in those findings. So I stated those there, and so I'm asking you, I have a possible motion here, and I have asked that you amend the 5 findings because of that removal of the word facility. The applicant is available, and I'm available for questions, and the applicant is here. I believe they're just available for questions, or do they have a presentation? You have a presentation? Oh, they do have a presentation. Oh, no presentation. They're just available for questions also. So we're all available for any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Ms. Olander?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you, this is Clay Thomas. Ms. Olander, and maybe I just missed it, but can you give me the definition or what the difference is between a group home versus a group care facility?
So the state allows group homes in every neighborhood. That's an NRS law. We can't, regulate that. And it's 10 or less. Anything over 10 is considered a group care facility.
So it's predicated upon the number of
Occupants.
Occupants, okay. I have a couple more questions for you.
That's okay.
Mr. Lloyd, feel free to jump in on some of these. It talks about the pets and that the number of pets they're going to have. What is the county code for the number of pets you can have on a single-family piece of property? Do we know?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Well, I don't know the dogs. Do we have dogs and cats in the code? I just know horses and livestock. I think
No, it's not livestock, it's domestic pets
I don't
and
know if we have
animals,
that.
and it's not,
I guess where I'm going with this is I'm trying to determine whether if a neighbor across the street is restricted to only have a certain number of pets on the property and yet this is a group home, are they held to that same standard or is there a different standard for a group home?
If a neighbor has animals that are his own, there is not a limitation unless it becomes a nuisance, and then animal control may get involved. But in our code, there is no limitation. Now, if it's a boarding operation or a kennel, for example, that would require a whole different required permitting, and it does require a special use permit if they are operating a kennel for a commercial purpose. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. Right?
Okay, yeah, because I know some jurisdictions you're restricted as to the number of household pets you can have. So and that's not in Washoe County then?
But Michael Larch for the record, it's not in Washoe County Building Code. There may be animal code or other Washoe County code, but Mr. Lloyd is speaking to building code in regard to the pets requirements. So if there are applications to other Washoe County code provisions, that Safe Embrace would be required to comply just like every other individual would need to.
Thank you. I guess we would, if we get to that point, make a motion.
I know that you have to have a permit to have over 3 dogs for an individual.
What I'm saying is maybe we'd need to make a motion to ensure that they comply with all other applicable codes, but thank you. That'll do for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Kathy Julian for the record. Right now, how many occupants do they have?
This is Julie Olander for the record. You'd have to ask the applicant. They can have no more than 10 at this time, and they probably can give you exact number if they asked.
And then, looking at the requirement about the interior space, what is, and they say 150 square feet of interior space for each additional facility user. How are they defining interior space? Is that, because when they say for each facility user, I would have interpreted that to be living space, space available to those users to live in, but it appears that you include the office and workspace in that calculation. Can you elaborate on that?
This is Julie Olander for the record. So it just, that section of code just refers to interior space. They eliminate no bathrooms, no garages, no hallways. That's the only thing. They don't say if there's an office area, and even if it's in a separate building, that is not called out in that section of code. So I can just go by what the code does allow and doesn't allow, basically what it doesn't allow. So the applicant had to calculate all the space on the property and then eliminate those areas that are not to be included.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Olander, is the garage that has been converted, was that done, lack of a better term, properly, or did it comply with the codes, or was it added later, do you know?
The building permits that have been done on the property have all been finalized, which would include the conversion of the attached garage, the addition of the four-bedroom addition, and then the conversion of the detached garage that was, so all those buildings have been finalized. And I just want to point out also, during the building license application process, so if this was to be approved, they would have to get a new business license from the group home to group care facility. And through that process, building goes and inspects the site, fire goes and inspects the site, health goes and inspects the site. Because it's a group care facility, the state goes and inspects the site. So there are numerous departments that will go inspect the site. Even after you approve this, they will come back in and confirm that those things have happened. And because there was a comment about maybe I need to put in that these buildings meet code. Well, they met code when they were final. We don't, and we don't make people, so they met code when they were built. But building will have to go back in and make sure that they meet the code currently too, just like as fire will and health would confirm and Nevada State Health will also. So they all have different sort of things they look at, but they'll look at, plumbing, they'll look at life safety, they'll look at electric, all those things will be looked at and make sure that it's a proper facility, group care facility. It's a pretty well documented process. And we don't have a lot of them here in Washoe County, but we have a few, and within City Sparks and Reno, they're more numerous, and so the process is well understood. And I'm sure the applicant can give you further information about how that process works.
I guess what I'm asking is, and you kind of mentioned it, that it was built to code. Well, if it's built to code because it's a garage, that's one thing. If it's built to code for residents, it's something else. So if it was a detached garage, which now occupies people, you figure that the code would have to change and it'd have to go ahead and take that into account before occupancy can take place.
Well, it was built to code as a resident originally in 64.
No,
I know,
we're
but
talking
and then
about the
when they
detached
came back
garage
in,
area.
can I get that slide back up? I need those dates. I can't remember all the dates.
I guess what I'm looking at right at this moment would be the two areas would be the attached garage and the detached garage. If they were built as garages originally or storage, and yet now they want to convert that into places of occupancy.
Right, but when that garage, you want to do it or you want me to do it? When they were built, okay, let's just go through here real quick. So when those spaces were converted, I'll show it on here. So when these plans came in for this building permit, and I just get my dates straight, in 2019, under WBLD 19-104-678, that building permit came in. And it's been pointed out, all it says in the summary is that they were adding the addition. However, it was also inspected for that garage, because the garage is noted in this building permits. It's hard to see at the very top of that screen, it says 159. And that note, I reached out to building and I asked him, I read him, gave him the note, said, what does this mean to you if you were reviewing this as a plans examiner? They said, they're converting the garage. So in this building permit that was submitted, not only did they do the addition for the bedrooms, but they did that garage. This was all done under Safe Embrace. So this was done, when I'm not a building inspector and I'm not going to speak for them, but when they go in, this is being used as a group home, or at that time in 19, I believe, I have to have the Safe Embrace people might be able to correct me, but I think at that time it was under the city of Sparks, and they had a license for a care facility at that time. They can confirm that, but that's my understanding of the dates. So at that time, whoever inspected that, whoever the building inspector was, which was one of ours, he went in and he inspected it as a group care facility. So this inspector, who I know, is very talented, capable. I have to assume that he saw it as a care facility, and he would have been, reviewed that conversion as living space for a care facility. I'm not sure what the difference would have meant if you were converting your personal garage for your personal use, or you were, converting it to be used as a group care facility. I'm not sure if there's a different procedure or something different they're looking at. But this garage was reviewed and finalized by Washoe County Building Inspector.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Kathy Julian for the record. Can we go back to the issue of this interior use? Because I see in email from, I think, one of the engineering offices, Exhibit B on page 17, they question whether the indoor space for 25 beds is sufficient. If it were, I'm having a hard time understanding if you're adding space for extra beds, but the space you're adding doesn't accommodate beds to make this work, to get up to that 4,056 figure. I mean, technically, you could have half of this facility as being an office space. You'd still have technically interior space, but you'd have far less space for beds. So did you reach out perhaps to the people who regulate these group facilities for clarification on this space requirement? I mean,
So this is Julie O'Hara. This is our code that has the space requirement.
Okay.
It's not the state. So this is our code. This is out of 322. And this is the language I basically just grabbed it and put it in. That's exactly what it states in our code. So, and then it goes on and it makes the exception, which I put at the bottom of this page. It doesn't include closets, hallway, places that people cannot really use as a group. So these are spaces, and this is not untypical of how buildings are looked at. A lot of those spaces are typically excluded because they are not considered living areas. So what they're proposing is that these other spaces, and the other thing I just want to point out also is that at this time, in a sense, they're only asking for the 18 occupants because they have not connected to sewer. If they have asked to have that as an option so they don't have to come back before this board, but at this time, they are only looking for the 3,000 square feet. They only need 3,000 square feet because they only have septic. So, but anyway, this is our code that states this, and it's not something that I need to confirm with another agency.
So for 18 people, they would require 3,000 square feet of living, which it appears subtracting out the 650.
So if you took out the office, the office and miscellaneous.
They do have sufficient
Yes,
living
they do.
space
Right.
for those 18
Right.
people.
But
Okay.
I don't want to mislead you in saying that they're asking for the possibility of having 25 if in the next year their discussions with City of Sparks, then they get that connection with the sewer.
Okay, but a closet, a hall, a garage, and a bathroom has something in common with a workspace insofar as it does not accommodate beds or living space for an occupant, correct?
Correct, but
Okay.
322 does not call out how many bedrooms they have to have. It's just living space.
Do we have anything else for her? Go ahead.
Peter Gashon for the record. Trying to make sense of the timeline and the jurisdictional mess that's gone on here. So this has been operating as a group home in the City of Sparks sphere of influence until such time that they sought to expand and then got approvals from Sparks that are now being challenged. And since that time, the property's been moved into the county's jurisdiction.
I'm going to let Mr. Large, he's much more familiar with the litigation that's been involved in this property.
Michael Large from the District Attorney's Office for the record. The expansion in the City of Sparks under their sphere of influence began in 2018. It was concluded in 2019, I believe. I the applicant could speak to the firm dates. They began operating with the full expansion after they had had the sign-offs and their certificate of occupancy had been done. In 2020, the sphere of influence changed, and since that time, because of legal proceedings, they have gone back pursuant to court order to pre-expansion levels.
So do they require a special use permit to operate as a group home?
Under Washoe County Code, they do.
They would for both the group home and the group care facility?
I'm sorry, not for the group home, for the group care facility, they do.
So they are currently operating within the confines of Washoe County Code today at the lower levels?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
At the, Kathy Julian for the record, at the risk of beating a dead
Of course, I just noticed that office and miscellaneous is 1,000 already. So what we really have for living space is 1,706 and 700. So that adds up to, 2,406 square feet available in living space, correct?
You know, I'm going to let the applicant maybe add into this. This is, the code just does not eliminate office. It doesn't say, like I said, I quoted straight from the 322. It says a minimum of 12,000 square feet of interior space shall be provided for the first 600. Rooms may be included in this calculated where care activities will be conducted, including bedrooms for sleeping room, food, preparation, living room, family rooms. Rooms which may not be included are, in this calculation, are closets, hallways, garages, and bathrooms. So that's stated. So I can't eliminate the office. It's not called out in the code.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay, but if you, I will let the applicant, or do you want me to stay and answer some?
I've got one question, if these guys are. Okay, so to the best of your knowledge, up until today, all the building permits that were pulled were all closed, everything is approved, the fences, everything around their property, that's to best of your knowledge.
So the building permits that I could locate for this property are basically the three I spoke about. And I'm just going to go back to those because I can't remember all the dates. And so there was one, oops, am I going the right way? No, sorry. Okay, so, oh, gosh, I guess I'm pushing too hard. Okay, so there, I thought I should be right before this. Where did it go? Oh, my gosh. All right, so there was a building permit pulled in 2019, and there was two building permits, one in 2002 and one in 2006. And all of those have been finalized, and those are basically addressing any of the additions from the original house, which was that was built in 64 with the garage and the residence.
Okay, so, yeah, because I'm looking it up and it looks like everything has been closed, the garage has been converted, everything's been signed off. And then, I drove out there today, and the road that's in front of the house is all torn up out in the main street. Do we know anything about that? Because there's been some comments about them deteriorating the road. Is that caused by them, even though it goes from one end of the block to the other?
It is an easement. It's not a public, it's not, Washoe County doesn't have public right-of-way there. It's an easement, so all the property owners are responsible for maintaining the street. You might ask the applicant if there's any improvement on, any plans to improve the road. They're at one end, they're at the end closest to Sullivan, so I agree. I drove the whole street, and it has potholes all the way along it. So.
Okay. That's all the questions I have for right now. Thank you. Do we have questions for the applicant? Or let's do, is the applicant present? Do they want to make a presentation? Do you want to make a presentation?
They don't have a presentation. They're just available for questions.
You're just here to answer questions. Okay. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have some questions for the applicant.
Okay.
Hi, Lisa Nash with Christie Corp. Representing the applicant, and I'm going to introduce yourself.
Jennifer McMenemy, I'm an attorney on behalf of Safe Embrace, and we do have our team here as well if you need to have any specific questions answered.
Can either one of you clarify or help clarify that issue about the actual square footage that we're talking about?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you how I interpreted it is the code says interior space. It doesn't specifically call out or define livable space, and office space, dens, areas like that are livable space. Plus, of the 1,000 that's in the office/miscellaneous, a large portion of that entire building is open to the residents with computers, playroom for the kids, things like that. It is not just office space that is for staff. There is no area in the building, to my recollection, that is off limit to staff and cannot be used for any living purposes. So when we looked at that, living space is not what we were looking at. We were trying to meet the interior space requirement, and we did exclude bathrooms, halls, closets, and I'm forgetting one. Garages. So I feel that it has been met and that the space is available to the residents to use. They are not excluded from any of those spaces.
Okay, thank you. My next question is there any neighborhood response program in effect right now?
We have been working to implement a neighborhood response program and be more responsive, but that is something, as the application showed, that will be implemented as part of this process.
Okay, so it's not implemented at this time?
Not currently, no.
Was it supposed to be implemented a while ago? I thought that was an opportunity for the community to get with you, I believe, what I read in the documentation, about once a week or whatever, maybe once a month, to discuss any potential issues that they had. Did that ever come into effect, or did you have that at one time and then it just kind of fell by the wayside and you're trying to re-implement it again, or?
I would have to ask Ms. West, Afshan West, who is our executive director, about that.
I'm Julie Olander, for the record. I think at this point, that was included in the special use permit application, that these things would be, included and move forward. At this point, it's still a group home, so I think that they are not under any kind of, I can appreciate that maybe they should have started these things beforehand to show some intent, but
Ms. Olander, I appreciate you coming in and answering the question for them. I want to hear from them of whether they have had any contact with the community as a good steward of the neighborhood, or if this is approved, you'll do it at that time.
Let me go ahead and address this. So first and foremost,
can you please state your name?
Oh, sorry, Jennifer McMenemy on behalf of Safe Embrace. So first and foremost, we have been working to identify problems with the road. In fact, I believe that a couple of weeks ago, we were willing to monetarily contribute to assist, just as everyone else on the block with the same amount of money. I would also like to point out that the road from one end to the other has potholes, and Safe Embrace is the third house in. So that just something to point out there. As far as an official program for neighborhood response, no, we do not have that at this time. In addition, there is a lawsuit pending, so the parties have been kind of careful about that.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, my question is, so it appears to me the bedroom areas are described to me, or perhaps we could have the executive director describe the interior of the building and where people are sleeping versus cooking versus whatever. Can we have some description of that?
So in the shelter, no one is sleeping in a room that is not designated as a bedroom. And you have to remember that when we say 18 beds, that also includes children and infants. And so, you know, a child could be sleeping with their parent in a crib or a pack and play in the same room with them, along with their brothers and sisters. So the shelter is designed to hold that many people with that type of setup, but there is nobody that is not sleeping in a bedroom on the property. And I believe that Lisa wants to answer.
Hello, Lisa Nash with Christie Corp. I've been in the residence many times to look at it while I was preparing these applications. And there is a large communal kitchen that everyone has access to. There's some small office spaces and smaller areas they can have if they're having meetings or somebody comes in to see them. The bedrooms are all set up with bunk beds that have a double at the bottom and a top. Some of them have 4 because often we have residents come in that have multiple children. And like she said, there's pack and plays. There's a large living room that is a communal space that they can all use. There is also in that detached garage, there's a small office space that staff predominantly uses, but residents are in and out of. And then there's a much larger room that, like I said, has play equipment for the children. It has computers for people to access. It was super useful during COVID when the kids needed to attend school remotely. It has functions like that. And then in the new 4-bedroom side, those bedrooms are slightly larger than the original ones in the home. And again, they have the double bunk beds. Each one has its own private bathroom, a closet, and access to each room. The way the facility works is one family is in a bedroom. We don't use those bunk beds to cram different families. The residents that we're trying to serve are coming in with enough things that they need a private, safe space for themselves. So everyone has a very good sized bedroom that also has, I believe, a chair and table out front. So there's a little sitting area in there too. They're not just sitting on beds and things like that. So that's the general layout of the facility, if that answered your question. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas, did you get your question answered about if the special use permit gets approved, would they look at a mitigation process?
In their documentation, they said that they were willing to do that. My question is whether it was already in existence and if they ever had a meeting.
Okay.
And I believe there was somewhere in the documentation, I thought they said they had in the past, but if not, they say they're going to commit to that.
Mr. Chair, if I can also address that too. There's a number of criteria, not the least of which is the requirement for a neighborhood response program to be provided to Washoe County prior to licensing. So before they get a business license, we would require that all of those standards be met.
Okay, wonderful.
Mr. Chairman, I was wondering if I can ask Ms. Olander to come back up. I have one more question.
Sure.
Ms. Olander, I'm going to direct your attention to Exhibit B, page 17, which is the Engineering and Capital Project Report. It was from Robert, I guess, Weimer?
Robert Weimer, Julie, yeah.
My question is under discussion, he specifically says it appears the indoor space of the existing home and covered garage equals 3,870 square feet, and basically for the 25 beds, 4,050 square feet, and he ends it with, therefore, it does not appear that there will be sufficient indoor space to accommodate the request for 25 beds. Following that, there's in red, it says this information was updated by you, and it's no longer a concern. What documentation did you supply them that clarified this point?
This is Julie Olander for the record. So originally, when we got the application, I did not have the calculations, and then Lisa Nash from Christie Corp provided that for me. So that's how that information was. Then when I got this from Rob Weimer, I then forwarded the email I got from Christie Corp, and then he added that information into the condition, or into his comment.
So the assessor's parcel information that is on record is incorrect then?
No, because that goes back to the exterior space. So the overall space that's listed in the assessor calculates the overall, but we need to calculate the interior, which eliminates the closets, the garage, the hallways, and the bathroom. that information was not included in the original application. So when I started going through this application, knowing that what 322 requires, I needed to have that interior space calculation. And Ms. Nash provided that for me in an email, which I then shared with, primarily with engineering, because that was the one that made a comment about that.
Okay, so let me see if I understand this a little bit better. The assessor's parcel information basically gives the square footage of the facility. They said, in their report, they said that's not enough for a 25-bed operation. You came back and told them what the interior was to exclude closets and other areas, and then, well, wait a minute, and then they say that's okay? Weren't they first looking at the total amount
Correct.
within the parcel? So how can we say that now, when you take out closets and bathrooms and all that, that it meets the square footage when it doesn't when they take the overall square footage into account?
So Janelle Thomas from the engineering department's here, and she might be able to speak to that a little bit more, so I'm gonna let her carry this one on.
Thank you. Okay, you're up.
Janelle Thomas, Senior Civil Engineer for the Engineering Department, CSD. When we initially reviewed this application, we did go to the assessor's information, and you are most likely correct in that there is likely a discrepancy between what is stated in the assessor's information on the webpage versus what is actually constructed. I'm not really sure. So, okay, Julie's going to take back over.
So, Julie Olander for the record. So I believe there was a second page, and I'm just going to go look at that really quick. So let me just look at the assessors really quick.
According to what I have in front of me, on the second page of that same exhibit, just talks about the City of Sparks sewer system, and that second page talks about the utilities. So
Yeah, there is.
if someone can just clarify how we get to the numbers we get to, that's all.
Oh my gosh.
If I can ask,
Let's let her finish
okay.
his question so we don't get her
Okay.
confused. Please, thanks.
So this is Julie Olander for the record again. So on the first page it has, and I should get a so on the first page it calculates 2131. And then on the second page. So on the first page, the calculation, so there's 2 pages on the assessors. And I don't know if engineering didn't notice it. On the first page, it calculates 2781. However, on the second page, it adds 1924, and I believe that gets me up to which gets me up to 4705. So I think it was just like Janelle spoke to, it was a miscalculation by engineering. Possibly? You wanna
Yes.
explain?
Yes. Again, Janelle Thomas for the record. I do believe that we were unaware of the second page on the assessor's information. So that number that we stated was probably just accounting for the first page of square footage that was identified for that parcel.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies.
It's okay, just needed it clarified, thank you.
Peter Gishon, quickly, just to clarify that, building card 1 is 2131 square feet plus the 650 garage. So engineering seemed to omit the 650 square feet of garage space. They caught both cards, but they missed the 650. So the actual is 4705 square feet in totality.
Without the inclusion of the garage.
With the inclusion of the garage.
With the inclusion of the garage.
Yeah.
Correct.
It looks like in 1964 that it was 2131 with the 650. And then in 2019, it's 1924 addition.
Thank you.
And just to add on to that, I don't believe the assessor is including that detached garage, because too many things to look at. Can I get my little screen back up again? It looks like they got the 1924, which is that addition, the bedroom addition. However, they don't have the 1,000 square foot detached garage. That's not in the assessors, on the assessors.
Okay.
And on some of these older properties, we run into this, and especially, so that's not unusual.
All right, did you?
However, I just want to really point out that building permit was finalized, and typically when a building permit is finalized, that gets passed on to the assessor, and the assessor then adds that calculation in. However, it doesn't appear that that happened with this property.
Okay.
No, that clarifies.
So you got it, okay. So.
And maybe, that's,
good?
that was done in 2002 and 2006, so things, I don't know, might have changed. They have changed, obviously, since this addition was included.
All right. Thank you. All right.
I do have a question, but perhaps it's more for Mr. Lloyd. On a number of these pages, it talks about operating practices that will be established. And in the conditions, it has a section on operating conditions. And I'm wondering but I note that on page 12, many of the items identified in the staff report that are said to be done are not under the section on operational conditions. And what is the scope for adding things to those operational conditions on page 12 to reflect what is specified in the staff report?
So I may need your assistance in terms of specifically which operational.
Well, for instance, on page 5, the willing to hire an advocate to reside at the site during overnight hours, or the comments about the pets and how that would be managed on page 6, or the landscaping in terms of the number of trees that'll be provided. Okay. I'm trying to think, and of course, the resolution system, the conflict resolution program with the neighbors. Would that be appropriate to have under an operating condition?
Appreciate you clarifying, because I think that's a great question. Each one of those are going to be probably handled a little differently. For example, you raised landscaping. We do have stringent standards in our development code, specifically our Article 412, that requires the applicant to meet those standards. And so that will be in place prior to issuance of a business license. I think the issue of the dogs, for example, that's something that the board may want to consider conditioning. They may want to limit the number of dogs, or maybe require. I don't know if you want to require that the dogs be not allowed to roam in the backyard all night, for example. I don't know. Whatever those conditions are that you feel are appropriate can be added at this time. There was a third one.
Willing to hire an additional advocate. Well, that raises the question of how many people do staff this at night. Is it the 4 staff members at night, or is that number smaller at night?
And the applicant should be able to answer that.
Jennifer McMenemy on behalf of Safe Embrace for the record. We have no one overnight currently staying other than the residents that are there. So there is no staff member currently staying the night.
Okay, thank you.
And then if it's the purview of this board, if you feel that additional conditions, such as hiring an advocate, should be applied in this situation. Also, the neighborhood response plan, the emergency response plan, those are requirements of code that are required prior to business license approval.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Ms. Olander, please. Peter Gishon for the record. So when you were addressing your findings, you described how you needed to amend them to simply remove the word group care facility because it's not currently operating as a group care facility. So you sort of presume in the findings, and now that we've had this discussion and we understand what has been happening and what will be happening, I assume you're not just correcting a typo, but can also still make all of the findings, notwithstanding the fact that, for instance, issuance not detrimental, it has not been operating as a group care facility for 20 years. Does it so dramatically change the character of the operation that you would reconsider how you address the findings, but for the typo?
I'm Julie Olander for the record. So when I did the findings, my understanding was had functioned as a group care facility. So I can still make the findings in the sense that it is a house that has enough room for that many people. It's housed that many people in the past at different times. I mean, I don't think it's housed up to 25. However, so I'm comfortable with still being able to make those findings.
Okay, thank you.
I think that the ones that, so we have consistency with the master plan. There's nothing in the master plan that speaks against a group care facility, even though this is just functioning as a group home currently. Improvements, the only improvement they possibly have is to have 25 occupants. They would need that sewer connection. So I feel like the other improvements are there. Site suitability, this is a challenging one in the sense of, it's allowed with a special use permit in LDS. And I somewhat rely on the board to make that final decision. However, as a planner, we allow it in other places. So other places, group care facilities are occurring in LDS zone property and then is not detrimental. I think that the applicant has shown that they are trying to do certain things to make it so it won't be detrimental. No 100% guarantee there, but I think they're attempting to, provide some services that will make it less detrimental or as least detrimental as possible. And so, yes, I can still make those findings as a group, because it has been functioning as a group home. I understand there's been issues there. However, I feel like also the applicant has made some attempts in their application to provide some options that will relieve some of those, issues.
Thank you.
We good? Okay, let's move on. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
This is Julie Olander for the record. I also want to add that I got no recommendations of denial from any other of our agencies. Yeah. So the other agencies look at it, fire, health, engineering, all of them looked at it also. None of them recommended denial. So that is it's just not all on me. It is a team effect, team decision on these findings. So if someone was to speak up within Washoe County and say, this isn't going to work at this location, that, obviously I'm going to take into consideration. But that did not happen with this application.
Thank you. I just want to add that according to animal control, the current regulations is 3 dogs, 7 cats. Any more than that, you need a variance permit. And when I was looking up to see if there was any citations issued for the place, I couldn't find any for the place for building or any of that stuff. So I just wanted to add that to the record. Let's move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We do. I have Kitty Nepper. Kitty, please approach the microphone. State your first and last name.
Katie Depper, and for the 3 years that they were a group care facility, they were supposed to have neighborhood response, and they did not. They did not do most of the things they were supposed to do, including the landscaping and everything else. I want to add to our email documentation that Save Embrace falsified their application, the most significant claim being that they were a group care facility for over 20 years. They are perfectly aware they were a group home until 2019, when they were issued a group care facility license in error. Planning's recommendation for approval reported this lie as the very first reason listed for approval in nearly every category. They were obviously not aware it was not true, and we went down Monday, and that's why they changed it. But this was a material fact. On the SUP supplemental information number 8, Safe Embrace states there are no deed restrictions that apply. Not only do these restrictions exist, but Safe Embrace has admitted in court they're in violation of them. If county were to follow its own code, this application has to be denied unless the county is playing favorites. These are material facts that are misrepresented. Safe Embrace falsified the SUP on purpose. As I said, they are well aware of all of this because they're in the middle of a court case over it. SUP supplementary information number 5 states what are the anticipated beneficial aspects or effects your project will have on adjacent properties in the community. There certainly aren't any beneficial aspects on the adjacent properties. Safe Embrace has never once been able to identify one single benefit to the neighborhood, yet they have been detrimental in many ways. For example, their heavy construction equipment severely damaged the private road, and they not only refused to acknowledge it, but they made no effort to repair it, not even the portion they're 100% responsible for. And yes, they were okay to put up $250 for the asphalt grindings, which is not a permanent road. We were asked, if not on Ponderosa Drive, then where could they be? Sparks Code has the answer. They allow this type of facility in mixed-use commercial and other areas such as commercial and professional, but not residential. And I want to point to these photographs. This isn't a look similar to the neighboring properties, as was stated. Look at that. We don't look like that. There's a car buried in there in those weeds. Next picture. This is a photograph of their tree. They've been dead for a long time. Poor neighbor complained, and they never cut him down until they actually fell down and hit his house. Next picture. This is a picture of their fence that was damaged during construction in 2018. Neighbor complained, the same neighbor that got hit his house, and nothing was happened. Now for the question you need to ask yourselves, if you lived in this neighborhood, would you want that next to him? City of Sparks doesn't. I'm out of time.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comments?
Yes, I have Marvis Boutel. Please state your first and last name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Marvis Butel, and I do not live on Ponderosa. I live on Capuro, which backs up to Safe Embrace. We share the same back fence. And before I begin, I want to really thank you guys because you've asked some very thoughtful questions, and I didn't think that you had probably read the neighbors' opposing report, and from your questions, I can see that you have informed yourself. In response to the neighborhood response program, I've lived at my address for 5 years, which is almost the same amount of time that's covered for this what we're discussing. And most of my problems with Safe Embrace have involved the animals. Not that I object to the animals, but I object to people who neglect their animals. Soon after we moved in, one summer, I guess it was the second summer, because the first summer was completely digging excavation for their septic system all summer long. So it must have been the second summer. One little dog was there for 90 days, and he barked day and night for 90 days. And nobody did anything about it or cared about it. And if I tried to ask or talk to somebody about it, I got, we can't talk to you, you have to talk to the advocate. But nobody would tell me who the advocate was or how to get in touch with them. More recently, there was a dog in the run, which they added later. And by the way, both the outside kennels and the run have absolutely no shade. The dog was in the run for hours, and he was barking and whining, and it was a hot day. And I went to the front door, and there is nothing posted. I know it came up that it's a public property, but it's not a public property, but nothing is posted in terms of no trespassing or anything. I went to the front door as a neighbor would to try to tell them about the condition of the dog, and I was met with, I was trespassing, and they were going to call the police. And I said, fine, I'll wait for the police. And I went and I sat in my car across the street and waited for the police, who never came. But in the meantime, one of the staff and one of the residents came out and walked the fence line, looking at me and my sister in the car, calling us all kinds of vulgar names, taking pictures of our car, our license plate, and ourselves in the car with their cell phones. And that is how they are as neighbors. And that is the kind of experience that we have had, my sister and I, for the last 5 years. They have no regard for their neighbors in terms of keeping their property up. Their garbage, quite a few garbage receptacles sit out in front continuously. The weeds are 3 feet high where there's no grass. They haven't been willing to participate in the road repair. And when we had to replace the fence that separates our property from theirs.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comments?
Yes, Mario Fragoli. Mario, please state your first and last name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Mario Fragoli. I live at 2104 Ponderosa Drive, which is directly across from Safe Embrace. Safe Embrace seems to be an organization that feels that because they're trying to provide a service to the community, they can do anything that they want without any regard to the rules and the regulations that we all follow. The city of Sparks went along with them, and they issued them a building permit and a business license, which was later thrown out in court that says that they didn't even follow their own regulations there. And during that ordeal, Safe Embrace said that they were going to sue my wife and I because we have a frame house with not brick construction. When we bought that house property back in 1988, I went over those CC&Rs that are attached to our deed. And I was under the impression that the planning commissions and what have you would see that those requirements were enforced. Our lot does not carry the restriction for brick construction. It was one of the first few lots that Joe Capurro sold, and the contractors that bought them all built brick construction. Then they went to Joe and said, add another requirement that requires brick construction. So our lot doesn't require brick construction, which was one of the reasons we bought it, because we didn't have to pay for the brick construction. Safe Embrace, they feel that because they're tax exempt and trying to provide a service, they can do anything that they want. They say that they don't park cars on the east side. That east side is covered with weeds 4 foot high, and there's been a car parked there on a regular basis, which is a hell of a fire hazard because of the catalytic converters that we have. They can't be trusted to do what they say. They say what they think you want to hear, and then they do whatever they want. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Samantha Gonzalez. Samantha, please state your first and last name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
It's him. He was just calling the next guy up. That's all. He was just calling the next person.
Hello, I'm Samantha Gonzalez. I live at the very end of Ponderosa Drive. And some of the history of the property that sort of was left out is that in 2019, when that permit was approved by the city of Sparks for their we call it their 4-unit motel, because that's exactly what it is. It's bedroom and bathroom. We were never noticed for that. None of the neighbors were ever noticed, and so that's part of why we're in litigation. I've lived there 22 years. I cannot tell you the amount of problems that we've had during that time, and they're only going to explode if you allow more people to be there. This is a transient population that stays a few days. I think it's a maximum of 90 days. And just to give you a list of some of the things that have happened, We have people that continually were getting dropped off and picked up in front of our home. That tells me the address is not confidential. That puts my and my family and my neighbor's safety at risk. We've had people walking the dogs, pooping all over, never cleaning up after themselves. We've had the problem with the dogs barking all night with the kennels. We've had people, man and woman, arguing in the backyard that the neighbor had to call the police. And of course, there's nobody there at night. We have to kind of try to deal with it. We have people walking down the street who've been kicked out with their garbage bags and their kids walking down the street. We have people asking us for rides. And one time we gave someone a ride and it was right to the shelter. We met her at McDonald's. So obviously it's not a confidential address. So for us, that's the number one reason we oppose this domestic violence shelter, is because of safety concerns. The federal government and the state of Nevada both recognize that. The state of Nevada even has a confidential address program because they understand that in the last 3.5 months, we've had 2 women murdered in Reno by their stalkers. This is a big, big safety issue for us. They say they're going to put in cameras to the response to the safety issues. Well, obviously the cameras weren't working if a tiny little girl got from 1 acre property to another acre property and no one was looking for her. That only happened a couple weeks ago. So we are asking you to not approve this expansion. We've had so many problems with the 8 to 10. You're going to add 25 plus 5 to 6 staff, plus all the people that come to do therapy, or they have interns from UNR. It's a business. Look at the renderings. Look at the pictures that they sent you. Would you want that next to you? It's a domestic violence shelter. We're scared. So I don't have any more comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our comment in chambers. I'll give it a second for any hands raised on Zoom. Okay, not seeing any hands raised via Zoom. That concludes all public comment.
Thank you.
Oh, we had one log on right now. Vicky DeMombro, can you please? Okay, fill out a card, please, sir. If you could please unmute and state your first and last name for the record.
Sir?
Hi, my name is Vicki DeMambro for the record. I am the current vice chair of the board of directors, but I have been associated with Safe Embrace since 2010. And in addition to that, I am a survivor. Safe Embrace has had a lot of issues in the past, and I will tell you that we are constantly, as the board of directors, talking about how we can resolve these kinds of issues, how we can make it better for our clients who are the reason we exist, but more so for the entire environment that they are in, and that includes the neighborhood. We have tried to address concerns, and we have met so much hostility, it's been difficult, but it is still something we are very much dedicated to. And as a survivor of domestic violence, when you try to escape, you need to get out now. And many of these victims don't have that opportunity, which is why we need more bed space. We need to be able to provide a safe place for these people, men, women, and children, to go and get away from what's happening, get their children out of there, and start working to build their lives again. And it's a very difficult process, and that's why we're here. I won't belabor that, but I just want you to consider we have a very needed purpose. And I've heard the suggestion, we'll just go over there. Who's going to provide the funding for us to move? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further hand raised via Zoom.
I have Bruce Snyder in chambers. Bruce, please state your first and last name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Bruce Snyder. I live at 2225 Ponderosa. I've kind of looked at this, recently moved there, and I found prior to when I moved in there was litigation because when the facility was built under Sparks guidance, they excluded all neighborhood input into that. And it led to a lawsuit, and Judge Harding threw out the building permit and the certificate of occupancy and the building license because of misconduct on the part of the city of Sparks as well as Washoe County. So I think one of the things I'm concerned about is since Judge Hardy threw out the certificate of occupancy and the building permit, that the county hasn't gone back and given the residents an opportunity to input on what was actually built there. When I did a calculation, looking at Washoe County Building Code, yours only would have been allowed to have built 1,500 square feet of additional space, and it was like over 2,000. Also, your concerns about whether there's enough room for living space, apparently there's 2 accessory dwelling units there, and one that they're calling a garage space. And they've confused it in their testimony today, that with what was the included garage space that was part of the house. As you probably are well aware that in the county code, each house has to have at least 1 covered parking space. And they converted their whole garage space, which was one of the covered parking spaces, to use. So there is no covered parking spaces there at all. I'm just saying that in the accessory dwelling that was built prior to the one with all the bedrooms now, they put in, I believe they're using that as considered living space, even though calling it a computer lab or whatever. It's not allowed to be used as living space. So I think you're very, very right in looking at this more closely. And I think what you need to do is look at all 3 living space, all 3, both accessory dwellings, and whether, and apparently City of Sparks allowed 2 accessory dwellings to be used as living spaces, where the county only allows 1.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any more public comment?
We have no further public comment.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Does anybody have any discussion on this? Sorry, I asked. No, kidding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clay Thomas, for the record, I guess I'll go first on this. I believe there's a piece of the puzzle that's missing, and maybe for clarification purposes, with your permission, I'd like to ask Mr. Large, maybe clarify this issue, that the Second Judicial Court did issue a writ of mandamus on that. Could you clarify what did that mean, and where does it put it in this situation? If that's
The writ of mandamus that was issued by Judge Hardy last year stated that Washoe County was to revoke Safe Embrace's business license, and that Sparks was to revoke the building permit and their approval of the expansion based on them handling the process administratively rather than through their planning commission. That decision has been stayed pending with an agreement with the plaintiffs in that action to allow them to operate currently at pre-code levels until that litigation is concluded, or whether the SUP gets issued on this property through this process.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Large. Also, I believe, is there not one other thing outstanding there, and that has to do with deed restrictions?
There is ongoing litigation in regard to the applicability of the deed restrictions on the Safe Embrace property. There has been no court determination at this time in that regard. And I would also note for the record that the mandamus law has issued, and the county is abiding by those orders. That there are still legal avenues available to the county and to the city of Sparks that may occur down the road.
Thank you very much for clarifying all that.
Peter Gashon, for the record, could you take that one step further, though? What of the certificate of occupancy?
The certificate of occupancy was issued by Washoe County, and that was not part of the mandamus relief that was ordered for us to revoke.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at it, if this were an STR in Washoe County, what would we be looking at in terms of how much living space is available for 18 people in an STR? Is because when I look at these numbers, in terms of bedroom space, and I appreciate the comments that it's 1 bedroom per family, it seems like it's about 100 square feet for a family, which seems awfully tight. If we were to look at this as an STR, would we be approving a 25-person STR, or would the county be approving a 25-person STR? And on what conditions? So I'm looking at this, and I have a hard time finding where this is not detrimental. And I also have issues with the thought that this, even 10 people, but 18 people or 25 people, families, children, in a environment where there is no one there in the evening hours. And it is, I have questions about the operations of this facility, which feeds into how issuance of not detrimental, the safety and welfare of the community and adjacent properties, and also the record of non-compliance or difficulties or lack of responsiveness that we appear to hear from communities. This all feeds into site suitability. And I see here, and I appreciate that there has been a group home here, but that group home has been at 10 people or below. And we're talking escalating that up to 18 or 25. And we already have issues with the 8 to 10 that are there now. So I have a hard time supporting this.
Peter Gashon, Mr. Large, once more, we were given a copy of the writ prior to sitting down, and it did revoke the certificate of occupancy.
What you have in front of you is the order granting issuance of writ of mandamus. The mandamus itself is an order that is issued to the city of Sparks and to Washoe County, designated exactly what we have to do. Washoe County was ordered to revoke the business license, which is what we have done.
And what did Sparks do with the certificate of occupancy?
So, Sparks never issued the certificate of occupancy.
I see.
Mr. Chair, I guess, I find it interesting. I think we kind of have a little bit of a dichotomy going on here. I believe what the business does is provide a vital community service by opening up their facility for the people that need it. But then again, on the other hand, we have the residents in the community that are not in agreement with that. So we have both sides. They provide a service, but yet within their own community, they're not, it does not appear that they're receptive, or that's what we've been given to believe, that not receptive to the needs of the actual residents there. With that, I tend to agree that with what we've got going here now and with what is going before the courts, I would probably be leaning more toward Right now, we have a no-harm situation if we allow them to continue to operate with the 10 that they have. I would be amenable to that, but as for going forward to increase this time, either 18 or to 25, I would probably oppose that on a couple different grounds. One of them is, first of all, I am not totally convinced that we actually have the size dimensions correct. Depending on what piece of documentation you have, there's different dimensions. I've got 2705 and I've got 4056 and other things like that that are all in the documentation. And like I said, with this going before the courts via litigation, if we make a decision on it, it goes before the courts, it could just be unwound again. So I think probably the proper course of action is approve it as it is, let it remain as it is within the community. It's been in operation for quite some time, and then we'll see what the future holds. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys all went out there. I went out there today and I looked at it, and some of the pictures that I saw are not up to date. I don't know when they were taken. The weed issue and things like that. The place, to me, didn't look that much different than the neighbors around there. But being a good neighbor is extremely important. Every business has to be a good neighbor to the neighbors. The issue with the dogs, I can relate to that personally, but that's why we have animal control. You can call animal control, you can file a complaint online, that can be handled. There's laws against that. I think that we need to definitely look at hiring a neighborly, an advocate for the property, because it sounds like there's a lot of issues that are going on, and whether they're being addressed or just blown off and not taken care of is not for me to say. I don't have proof either way on that. I have to go by what the facts show. The burden of proof is on the applicant, and so I just don't have proof of that. I can't believe everything I see or hear, and I don't see any fines or any code enforcement issues or anything like that. I, for one, think that everything can be handled. I think that they do provide a service that is necessary for the area, and I tried to look them up on Google Maps to see if they were a private entity or not, and it gave me an address of someplace on Mill Street or Rock Street. It didn't give me their address, so it appears that maybe they are private. I don't know. That's just from my own personal searching on it. But I personally would be in favor of approving the application, knowing that I trust Julie and what her calculations for the place are. I would like to see somebody go in and verify the size, but that's kind of out of our control, I believe. That's something that the building department has to do. So I'm in favor of approving it, but that's just me. Do we have any more comment? No? Can I entertain a motion? Somebody got a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
All right.
I move that after giving reasoned consideration of the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment deny with conditions special use permit case number WSUP 22-0019 for the Safe Embrace to include varying of the requested light-in parking and paving requirements with the conditions included in Exhibit A to this matter, having not made all 5 findings in accordance with the Washoe County Code 110.810-30, that being improvement and issuance not detrimental.
I second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All those in favor of a denial, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed to the denial? Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Lords.
You could make another motion, or you could say it's at an impasse in terms of that we can't make a change.
I think we'll just go with the impasse.
Okay. Then, because there's been no affirmative vote, the SUP has been denied.
Mr. Lloyd, appeal process, please.
Absolutely. Most decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and qualify as an aggrieved person or party, you may appeal in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is reduced to writing, filed with the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment, and mailed to the original applicant in proceeding being appealed in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call the planning staff immediately at 328-6100 for more information on the appeal procedure and the application fee.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just point of clarification, they can continue to operate just within as a group home at this point in time?
As Ms. Olander said, the group home facility of 10 and under is a matter of right, so they don't even need, they wouldn't need a permit for that.
Thank you, just wanted that.
And pursuant to the litigation, they're also able to operate at that level.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to number 10, chair and board items, future agenda items. You guys have anything? You guys have anything you want? No? Okay. Request for information from staff. Do you have anything? All right, we'll move on to legal counsel.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
So, Doug, you have something?
Under future agenda items, I just wanted to give the board a heads up that we will be hosting a training. It's looking like we were looking at the end of August because of some unavailable times. We're looking at the middle of September. If you haven't done so already, please respond to Kathy Emerson with your availability in that regard.
Yeah, I might add to that, there was 2 dates, one at the beginning of September and one during the middle of the air races, and I can't make the air race.
Do you have the dates?
I do, but I believe it should be in your email
Okay.
from Kathy. Just respond to that.
I don't want to pile on here, but we may consider pushing those dates out farther in light of potential future vacancies on this board. People may need to be,
Replaced?
People might need to be replaced because people are moving.
We're not going to specify why.
All right.
Yes, please consider that. Request for information from staff. Do you have anything? No. Report of previous Board of Adjustment items. Director, Legal Counsel. Nothing?
Nothing to report from the BCC.
Anything from legal?
Oh, I was just going to, is this an appropriate time? I'd like to thank Julie Olander for a very difficult day. And so thank you.
Nothing from legal.
Nothing from legal. Okay, do we have any public comment?
I have no public comment in chambers and no hands raised via Zoom.
All right, then we are adjourned.